And other than that, that's all I had with WordPress Houston. So I do want to say hello to Greg, as we've been talking. And I haven't really met you in person, but I found you definitely through up in Dallas for State of Search. That's the first time I saw you speak. And then since then, it's been all over YouTube. Daggone it. Every YouTube ad, I see you in there with your SEMrush tutorials and education. Yeah, so that's super cool. But I think I got in contact with you because of Search Lab, because I'm using your service for PPC coaching, really, which has been great. I've had one meeting so far. It's been really, really great. It's awesome. Really nice to have another third party kind of review what we do that's not in the business, that kind of has a second glance on it. So it's been really great. So I appreciate that. But Greg, if you want to introduce yourself and take it from there.
So I'm Greg. I do local SEO and I speak at conferences all over the world. To give you some perspective, in 2019, a guy that works for Conductor did a little research project where he took every digital marketing conference that had more than, I think it was 100 attendees all over the world, listed out all the speakers and cross-referenced it. And I am supposedly the most in-demand speaker at conferences all over the world for digital marketing conferences by an order of several magnitude. So when COVID hit last year and they canceled all the in-person stuff, even though it was March, I already had 28 conferences booked in 8 different countries. So my job is SEO, but a lot of my job is teaching SEO to other people at conferences and speaking at conferences. So I do lots of speaking. I'm a kind of a process guy. I'm really big on efficiencies. And lately I've been talking a lot more about agency processes and how to actually do the work as opposed to what are the tactics for doing the work. But I'm talking about tactics tonight. So, and are we ready? Should I jump right in?
Yeah, go jump right in. This is great. Yeah.
Let me share that screen. So this is how to show up in local searches in a post-COVID landscape and beyond. And I want to point out that throughout the presentation, there will be some links in the bottom corner from my video series. Every Tuesday, I release a short 3 to 5 minute video called Local Search Tuesdays. It's all quick tips on specific tactics for better visibility in local searches. So check that out. And anytime you see that link down there in the corner, there's always going to be links to other videos throughout the presentation that dig a little bit more into particular topics that I'm mentioning, because I tried to squeeze in as much as I could into the time that I've got tonight. If you're somebody that writes in all caps, make sure that you write those blue links in lowercase, because other than this one, they're all case sensitive. But I mentioned earlier, I speak at a ton of conferences. And because of that, I see some not so great presenters. I'm sure you've kind of seen this with the whole Zoom thing lately, but it's even worse in person at a lot of these conferences, especially some of the ones that are vertical specific, where it's not a digital marketing conference, but it's a conference just for attorneys or just for car dealers or just for doctors. You get a lot of presenters that aren't really that engaging to watch. And, typically there's like a podium that they stand behind on stage, and they just stand locked behind the podium, and they're very stiff, and they have their back to the crowd, and they're just reading their own slides. And even worse, the background of all the slides is plain white, and it's black Arial font, and they just have tons of bullet points that they read through, and it's really painful to watch. So I'm a firm believer in the fact that bullet points kill kittens, and today's presentation will be entirely safe for all the kitties out there. And you notice there at the beginning, hopefully, the reference to Contagion, since I was trying to tie into COVID there. I am a ridiculous movie freak. I was actually a film major back in the day when I was in college. I have a full sleeve of movie portrait tattoos. I've started on my left arm sleeve, and my entire right leg is sleeved up with tattoos from the Goonies. So every time I do a presentation, I like to share my love of movies along with my love of talking about SEO. So there's always a theme. And one of the things that I do is I go back and include one movie for every year in the last 50 years. So today we've got science fiction movies, and I actually have 125 different science fiction movie references in the deck. But because we're doing sci-fi, I broke my rule and I went back 53 years because I'm a huge fan of all the Planet of the Apes movies, and I had to go back that far to include them all. So I know that there will be some stuff in there that you haven't seen. There's some obscure stuff in here. So if you're ever curious, there is attribution to the side. So tonight, not only will you learn some awesome tips about how to get your sites to show up better in searches, you'll have some cool movies to watch. So let's get to it. Are you here tonight because you need a hand with SEO? Do you spend too much time looking up at other websites that rank higher in search results? Showing up in local searches is a really tough puzzle to crack. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't put much effort into the SEO, and they just try to coast along with only a website and don't put much effort into it. But unfortunately, if you do that and you try to just coast along, you're going to blend into the background. And if you blend into the background, nobody's really going to see your site. And if they do see your site, it's almost like you're virtually invisible. People don't really notice you, and you're not going to convert any business. But I don't want you to lose your head. I'm here tonight to help, because there is a ton of information out there online, but a lot of it is outdated or flat out wrong. So tonight, I'm going to help you dig through the giant pile of crap that's online about SEO and show you the code behind Google's algorithm so that you'll understand how things actually work. So the most important thing to understand is you need to really, at a base level, understand how Google works. And I'm a big fan of trying to boil things down to simple concepts at first, and then expanding on that once everybody's on the same page. So at the most basic of basic levels, Google is really just pattern detection. That's really all Google is. Google is detecting and classifying patterns that it finds on different websites. So then once it's classified your pattern, you're able to be accessed by the algorithm, and the algorithm can return search results when somebody does a search. So those search results are displayed based on two factors: relevance and prominence. So let's look at those two. Relevance is, does the website have the attributes the searcher is looking for? If I'm looking for a car dealership, is this a website for a car dealership or not? If it makes the cut, cool, it makes the relevance list. Then that relevance list is sorted by prominence, which basically is which website is the better answer to the question, which website stands out from all the rest. And a lot of times people equate SEO with just doing keywords and putting keywords in certain spots, and that's all you have to do. But showing up well in searches isn't just about using the right keywords. Again, if we want to boil things down to the simple concept, if you want to show up in a search result, you have to answer the question that the searcher is asking, or provide a solution to the problem that the searcher has. And it's not just about answering that question, it's about having the best answer to that question. So if you have a website and you're trying to get it to show up locally in Houston, you can't just have a great answer. You've got to have a great answer that's the best answer and most useful answer in the Houston metro area if you want to show up better in those searches. And we know that in today's post-COVID landscape, every sale is going to start with a search online, which means SEO is the most important thing that you could do. And in fact, a lot of studies have been done that show that COVID has changed customer behavior at a very fundamental level. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses still reference the whole COVID and pandemic and lockdown situation. And I talk to a lot of businesses and a lot of agencies with my job and what I do. And a lot of agencies and a lot of in-house people at companies keep using the COVID excuse and say, oh, well, we're just waiting for things to get back to normal. We can't really look at anything right now because it's just COVID, and COVID's thrown everything for a loop. But these same studies have also shown that the behavior of customers, the way that they search for businesses before they make a purchase, that change is a permanent change. So it's important to not keep looking back and thinking, I want things to get back to the way they were or back to normal, because the way things are now is the new normal. And another important thing to understand is the trend to buy locally is accelerating because of COVID and because of the fact that a lot of businesses have been struggling for the past year and a half and are not able to keep up with all of the e-commerce guys. The buy local trend has accelerated. A lot of people want to support the smaller locally owned businesses. So it's important to understand that local SEO is the key to winning that war. And you don't have to be one of those massive e-commerce stores, or even not even e-commerce. You don't have to be a massive website. Small businesses and local websites can use simple local SEO tactics, nothing that complex, and blow past those big entities because you're able to do things that the bigger sites can't. So let's start off by looking at some important stats from some studies that have been done over the past year that point out some important factors related to how you need to show up in searches. First of all, Accenture did a study that said 46% of people are more likely to shop in a neighborhood store that's closer to their residence. So people are not willing to drive as far. They want to get to somewhere that is close to where they currently live. And 59% of people are more likely to use curbside pickup even after these lockdowns and the pandemic have all ended. So a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever it is that we're not worried about masking and social distancing and other variants, and we are back to mixing in the public the way we used to, people will still be more likely to continue to use curbside pickup. So that's a factor that people want to look for in the future. And about half of people have decided where they're going to purchase or where they're going to buy based on whether or not they can see something online and then pick that thing up in the store in the real world. And 56% of people say that they rely on reviews to make their purchase decisions faster. So they're relying on that review information to shorten that sales cycle, which means reviews are more important than they've been in the past. 70% of internet users are using their smartphones more often as a direct result of the pandemic, which makes sense because more people are sitting around at home. And if you want to look something up, you're going to look it up on your phone. You're not going to go to your office or to your bedroom or wherever the laptop or the computer is. And a lot of search is happening on mobile now as a direct result. And that's important because anytime you do a search on a mobile device, those search results are inherently localized. Google knows where you are when you're doing that search. You're either connected to Wi-Fi and the IP address is going to give your general location, or you've got a GPS chip in the phone and Google knows exactly where you are, or it can triangulate the cell phone signal and figure out a general location. And Google's going to automatically return localized results for any queries that have local intent, even if you don't enter in a city or a neighborhood or a metro area or a phrase like near me or nearby. And so that leads me into the fact that local SEO is what you need if you want to show up in a particular geographic area, and it lets you win more of those localized and mobile searches. It's important to understand that Google doesn't just have a single algorithm. There are multiple algorithms at play. And when you type in a search query, Google's going to try to sort out the intent of that search. Google's going to try to figure out what is this person looking for. It's going to choose the right algorithm to return those results. And the local algorithm has different weights and even considers additional signals, which means it's more complex because the traditional algorithm has a certain set of signals that it considers. The local algorithm also considers those signals, albeit at a different weight, but it includes additional things that you don't have to worry about if you're not just trying to show up in a particular geographic area. So when we talked earlier about relevance and prominence, it's a little bit different when we're talking about localized search results because real world location is also at play. So it's relevance, prominence, and then proximity, which means how far are the search results away from you when you do that search. Before I really dig into specific tactics here, I want to have a couple of caveats at the top of your mind. Number one, SEO takes time. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but I always like to mention this because people still seem to forget the fact that when you're doing SEO, the things that you're doing today are affecting your visibility a month or 2 or 3 months from now. So it's not a sprint. It's not like you can do a little bit of SEO and see immediate results. It's going to take time and you have to continue to push those signals out over that period of time. So it's more like a marathon. You're in this for a long-term investment. And a lot of people like to choose the cheapest SEO option. And a lot of times cheap ends up being more expensive because they don't do enough to help you they do stuff that could potentially harm you, or they do nothing at all and you're just throwing money away while your competitors are investing in their future. And by the time you realize that, it's even more time and effort that's required to get you where you need to be. So as we talk about this local search algorithm, it's important to understand where local search results are displayed in Google. So the easiest, most obvious clue that the local algorithm is at play is the map pack. You see the map with the 3 results underneath. Now, sometimes on mobile lately, Google has been displaying only 2 results underneath, but it's still a map pack. It's the map with the results underneath. Now, you always have the ability to click view all beneath that. And when you do so, it takes you to what we call the local finder. This is going to have the map on the right side and all of the results in that left panel. And it goes beyond just the top 3. So you can see the people that are not doing well enough to show up as one of the top 3 options. You can also go directly to Google Maps. So whenever you're searching in Google Maps, you're actually using Google's local algorithm. Now, one thing I always like to point out here too is notice the Google Maps interface and the local finder interface look fairly similar, but there's one important thing that's different. I am just north of Dallas in Plano, Texas, actually right now at my office. And when I built this deck, this search is just for Ford dealership. I'm not putting in a location. So when we see this here, you notice the Dallas Metro is fairly close to centered there. It's a little bit skewed towards the north just because that's my real world location. But notice we see the entire metro of Dallas when we go to that local finder, which is directly off of the map pack. But if I was to go directly into Google Maps and do the search, notice I see only the northeastern quadrant of the metro area, because when I go into Google Maps, that's a clear indicator to Google that I need something definitely local, and it's going to dial in that search radius a little bit tighter. But then below the map pack, if you were to go past the map pack, you see organic results, but these results are not standard organic results. These are actually localized as well. So the most important signals that affect your visibility in local are the content on your website and how it's optimized, the inbound links pointed to your site, the reviews that you have, and your Google My Business listing. So we're going to talk about all of those, but before we dig into that, I want to talk about the recent page experience update. It's important to understand that Google releases a ton of updates. Google actually released over 3,000 updates last year, but it's always going to pre-announce or announce ahead of time when a major update is coming that Google knows is going to affect a significant number of websites. So the little tweaks that they do multiple times a day, those are just really small tweaks. It's not going to make a big deal. But when Google rolls out a major update, they're always going to let you know ahead of time so you have time to prepare. So this page experience update was actually supposed to be released in May, but not enough sites prepared for it. So Google kind of pushed it off for a couple more months to give people a little bit more time to prepare. So it actually rolled out in late July. So we're only about a month and a half into this update being in effect in the real world. And this update was not a penalty-based update for anything. This was an update that is incorporating the core web vitals. Now, core web vitals were really already a part of the algorithm, but think of it more like they're now officially part of the algorithm and the weight of that signal has been turned up. But it's core web vitals and also customer experience signals. So the page experience update is literally, what is it like to use a website on a smartphone? So core web vitals, I know she was talking about that a little bit as we were coming in, but just to make sure everybody understands what they are, there's 3 elements that are part of core web vitals. The first one is LCP, or largest contentful paint. That's the biggest element to render. Now, a lot of people mistakenly think this is the biggest element on the page. It's not. It's the biggest element above the fold. So it's not always a large image or a large video if they're not above the fold. Sometimes largest contentful paint could just be your H1 heading. So it entirely depends on what's above the fold when the site gets rendered. Now, also, it's important to understand that when Google puts out information like this, or when you use a SiteGrader, it is something that is incredibly generic and meant to apply to every site out there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that something is bad if your site doesn't matches up. For instance, Google's published stat says for largest contentful paint, you want it to be 2.5 seconds or faster. Does that mean if you've got a 5 or 6 second LCP that you're going to be penalized? No. really what's going to happen is you're going to get penalized if you've got something that is an outlier. You take a really long time. But if you have any decently sized image or video on the page, you're probably going to be closer to 5 or 6 seconds. Going from 5 or 6 seconds down to 2.5 seconds, you could go through the motions of doing that, but it's probably not going to be a good way to spend your time because it won't really matter when it comes to the algorithm evaluating your site. So please understand that 2.5 seconds is just what Google says. Realistically, you're probably fine if you're at 5 or 6 seconds. The second one, FID, which is first input delay, which basically means how long till you can click on something and have something happen. Because you've all seen it where you load a site and you click a button and you just have to wait a minute before anything actually happens because it has to finish that load process first. Now, Google says you want to target 100 milliseconds. That's 1/10 of a second or faster. Realistically, that's right. You want your site to be clickable. You don't want someone to have to wait for 5, 6, 7 seconds or longer to be able to click on your menu if they're not interested in what's on that page and they just want to get to write what they're looking for. So make sure that that happens pretty quickly. And then the last one we were just talking about right before we started the presentation, cumulative layout shift. Of course, Google wanted to name all of these with these weird long words that are really hard to say, but this is basically the amount of visual shift. So if you have a slideshow at the top of the page and that starts loading, but you weren't paying attention when you created the slideshow and the fourth image in your slide is larger than the other images, when that fourth image appears, all the text gets bumped down on the page. And so every time it goes to that fourth image, the text goes down. And then when it goes off of the fourth image, either back to the first or onto the fifth, the text moves back up. So you have this constant shift. That's bad. And that's not a great user experience. So Google's going to start penalizing you if you have something like that happen. And then we've got customer experience signals. So mobile friendliness. So Google's looking at what your site looks like on a mobile device. A lot of us, especially people using WordPress, still have the desktop first design tenet in mind, which means you know that your site is responsive. So you design everything for what it looks like on the computer because that's what you're using when you're using WordPress to set your site up. But what you actually should be doing is thinking about what it's like to use the site on mobile and then using elements of the theme that you're using or your CSS to enhance that experience on desktop. But mobile friendliness is also how far apart the clicks are. So if you have a submenu that drops down and there's not enough padding in those links and they're all very close together, and you've all seen sites where you pull your phone up and you have to just very carefully touch the right thing to be able to have that pop up, that's bad as well. So it's all about making sure your site is mobile friendly. This also includes being responsive, which most of you probably should be since we're talking WordPress, but just in case you're using a really outdated theme, you do need to be responsive. Safe browsing is also incorporated. Clearly, nobody wants to land on a site that's been hacked, that's full of Viagra links or gambling links, or land on a site that's got malware that's going to infect your computer. So that's a factor now. Secure browsing has been part of the algorithm for years now, but they've turned up the dial. It's basically a must at this point if you want to show up in search results. And then intrusive interstitials, continuing Google's trend to name things in words that are very difficult to say. This is a fancy way of saying annoying pop-ups. So if you have pop-ups that appear on the page, as soon as the page loads without any user interaction whatsoever, and that pop-up covers any bit of content on the page, you're probably going to be penalized for that. Think about how you browse the internet. If you land on a site, you know nothing about that site yet, and a giant pop-up appears, what are you going to do? You're going to close the pop-up so you can read the site. So you shouldn't do that on your own sites. Now, you could test your core web vital scores with tools like PageSpeed Insights, or you can use Lighthouse, or we like to use webpagetest.org. Now, PageSpeed Insights will give you those scores. So does Lighthouse, so do other tools. The reason we like webpagetest.org is it gives you what's called a waterfall graphic. So every single call to the server appears in a waterfall graphic with a little bar that shows you a representation of how long it took that element to load. So if something is set to load sequentially, then you'll see that it has to finish that element before everything else loads. Or if things are loading simultaneously, or if you have an unoptimized image that takes 8 seconds to load, it's very easy to see what your problems are because of that waterfall graphic. So if you've never used it before, go run your site through webpagetest.org. It's a free tool. It's actually really, really cool. It gives you those core vitals, but it gives you a lot of other valuable information as well. So let's move on and talk about website content signals. This is your on-site elements. A lot of people have fallen into the cadence of equating content with doing SEO, because years ago, Google said, hey, we like fresh content. So a lot of site owners, a lot of business owners, a lot of agencies even know that a lot of SEO is in the code, it's behind the scenes, and it's in the back end, and people don't necessarily see anything changing when they're doing SEO, or people don't necessarily understand you've got to do all these different elements, but they do understand, hey, I need to add content because Google likes content. And it's just turned into let's add content, add content, add content. And there's no real strategy behind that. And Google doesn't actually care how much content you have on your site. Google cares how good that content is. Google wants to see the best answer, like I said earlier. So don't fall into that trap. Don't equate adding lots of content with doing SEO. Make sure you've got a better answer instead of adding lots of answers. And McKinsey ran a study recently, and that study revealed the 3 attributes that customers are using to select the place that they're going to buy from in today's post-COVID landscape. The first, proximity to home, how far away that place is from where they live. The second, hygiene. Are they enforcing a cleaning protocol? Are they being safe? Are they enforcing masks? If it's a business that requires vaccines, do they do that? Like, how safe is it going to be to go shop at this store? And then the final one is there room for social distancing? Is there massive lines in the store, or do they have multiple places that you can go so there aren't lines? Are they enforcing social distancing? Basically, is there room to physically be safe in the store? And the really great thing about all 3 of those factors is you can solve for all 3 with the content that's on your site. So the most important thing to think about when you're looking at the content on your site is it needs to truly be uniquely about your business and about the local area, because again, we're trying to show up in the local area. And far too often, people are going to copy their content from their closest competitors, or they're going to use a marketing partner that's going to use the same sorts of content everywhere, or they're going to use a WordPress template that comes with some default content and they don't really update it. So make sure that it's actually about your business so that you stand out, and make sure it's about the local area so local customers know where you are and know that you truly are a great place to go buy from. The way that we like to test this is we say, look, if you sit in your office and open Google up and type just 2 words in, pizza delivery. Yep, sorry, I'm completely off on something I'm talking about later. This is the content switch test. Please excuse that. So the way we like to test this is we look at the homepage. We look at the About Us page. We look at a major product or service page. Let's use the homepage as an example. What we want to do is change the business name and change the city, and think, could we now take that page's content and put it on a similar business's website on the other side of the country? So let's say Seattle, LA, Miami, Chicago, whatever that would be. If the content still works, then that means it's not really about your business and it's not really about your local area. So it's a really easy way to quickly test that content and see if it's uniquely about your business and the local area or not. And then it's really important, even in today's world, to add COVID content. And I talked about this at a conference a week ago, and they were like, yeah, we're in Texas. We don't have to wear masks. We don't have to be vaccinated. Why do we want to put that on there? Because all the studies have shown, and lots of research has shown, the general public still cares. They want to know, is this a safe place to go? So you do need to add that COVID related content to your site. And you don't just want to put a pop-up on the homepage, because we already talked about why pop-ups are bad. And a lot of businesses will put just a little COVID banner across the top, and that's not really sufficient either. You need a dedicated page of COVID information. And that page needs to include information about your safety procedures. And it needs to include information about any alternative service options, like curbside pickup, that we know from the studies is something that people are going to be looking for. Another thing to boil down to a simple concept. If you want to show up as a search result when somebody types in a couple of words, you need to have a page on your website that's about that concept. Now, it's not the old days of keyword to keyword matching. It's more about the general concept. So if you don't have a page about that concept, it's not likely that you're going to show up in search results. So keep that in mind. Another important thing that Google wants to see is conversationally oriented content. So it needs to sound like something that you would say face-to-face to a customer that just walked in the front door. So the best way to test that is to read it out loud. And I'm not talking about think it in your head. I'm talking about grab another body, have them sit there, and read the content out to them. Because as we are all working with our WordPress blinders on and thinking about what we're putting in our site, we don't often think, does this content sound like something I would really say? And when you read it out loud, you'll catch those things. So my favorite story here is several years ago, I had a car dealership in Dallas see me at a conference in Vegas, and they said, hey man, we'd love to talk to you when we get back in town about you handling our SEO. And we said, sure. But we went back to the office and we checked out their website and everybody died laughing. Basically, the homepage content for this dealership sounded something very close to this. If you want to buy a Ford pickup in Dallas, come to our Ford pickup headquarters in downtown Dallas, where we sell more Ford pickups than any other dealership in Dallas that sells Ford pickups. So when you're ready to buy your next Ford pickup, come on down to our Ford pickup headquarters and we'll give you the best deal on a Ford pickup when you're ready to buy your next pickup. So the guy that wrote that was thinking, holy crap, guys, we're going to rank so well for Ford pickups in Dallas. But every human that read it was thinking, what the hell is wrong with these guys? And you don't catch that stuff when you just read it on the page. So that's why it's so important to physically read it out loud and catch those things. Another thing that happens fairly often, I'm going to do this with Dallas suburbs because it's easier for me to rattle them off since I live here, is you'll see a website that says, hey, you know, welcome to our site. We also serve customers in Richardson, Plano, Garland, McKinney, the Colony, Frisco, and they'll list off like 15 cities. You wouldn't say that to someone that just walked in your front door, so you shouldn't say it on your site either. A, it doesn't sound natural, and B, that comma-separated list of cities is not going to help you show up in those cities. It's a lot more complex than that. So this will help you write all of this awesome content that you need to have on your site. And then once you've written that content, you need to optimize it for Google. And again, boiling down to simple concepts, I kind of like to equate Google to a curious toddler. Google knows a little bit about a lot of different things, and it's very, very curious and wants to learn more about everything. So if you hold Google's hand and optimize your site in such a way to make it painfully obvious to Google what your site is about, you're going to perform better. And again, because we're talking about the local algorithm, it's really important to include what we call geo terms, geo optimization. We want to drive home, hey, we're in Houston, or we're in the Woodlands, or wherever you might particularly be located. You need to make it very clear. So I'm going to walk you through the various page elements when you're optimizing your site so that you understand where to insert these local signals. First, the title tag. Everybody hopefully knows that the title tag is what shows up above where you type in the URL up in the little tab. It's the most weighted element on the page. It's also what typically will populate your blue link when you show up as a search result in Google. You should never put your business name first because you're the only business named that. You're always going to rank #1 for that phrase. So don't waste valuable optimization space. And then make sure you've got your important keyword phrase and your city and state abbreviation. The second most important element is the H1 heading, typically the big thick headline right at the top of the page above your text area. You want to have the same important keyword phrase. You want to have your location information there as well. It's okay if this is a little bit more conversationally written, but you want to make sure that we've got that same keyword phrase and same location in there as well. Then obviously it needs to be in your content, but we've already talked about a couple of tips to make sure, wow, all the lights just went off outside. You need to make sure that you've got all that stuff in the content, but likely if you followed all the tips I talked about and write something that's truly about your business and you use that content switch test to make sure that it's uniquely about you in the local area, you probably won't have to do much here. You're probably already going to be set up for that. So then you want to make sure that you've got it in the URL as well. We're talking WordPress, and WordPress allows you to set customized URLs for any of the pages that we're talking about. So the example I like to use here is a lot of car dealers will have the kind of default out of the box URL for their used cars page be something like dealership.com/search used or /search pre-owned, where they'd be much better off with dealership.com/used-cars-Houston-TX. It's a better signal to humans and it's a better signal to the search engines. Alt text is also a big one. So years ago, when I would talk about SEO, I would mention that Google can't tell what's in an image. So alt text has been included in that image embed code to describe what's in that image. Well, now Google can tell you pretty much exactly what's in the image because their machine learning algorithms for images are really advanced and almost a little bit scary. But the alt text element is still part of the algorithm. And this is something that most website owners, most business owners, and a lot of marketers don't do anything with. So it's a great way to outpace your competitors and add additional relevancy. Now, WordPress at a default is going to populate that title element of the image. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the alt text element. Also, this is an ADA compliance issue. So technically, you are in breach of ADA guidelines if you don't have alt text on your images, because if someone is blind and they are using a browser that is a reading browser, so it reads the content out loud, the browser cannot tell what's in the image, but it will read the alt text on the image. And as crazy as it sounds, there are some law firms out there that will go after businesses that don't have any alt text on their images and sue them for ADA compliance. So not only do you want to do it for SEO, you want to do it to protect yourself from potential legal issues. And then the meta description is also really important. Now, the meta description is behind the scenes, doesn't play into ranking whatsoever. But since the meta description is what populates those couple of gray sentences underneath your blue link when you show up as a search result, you want to be sure that it's optimized. Think of it like an ad. You want to write something really compelling that's going to get people to click through to your site. So if you have better content that's more focused on you and your business, and it's better optimized for Google, you're going to show up better in those local searches. So now let's move on and talk a little bit about inbound links. This would be links pointed to your website from other websites. And it used to be the most important, most weighted signal, and it was all a numbers game, but it's not a numbers game anymore. Also, by the way, I've got that tattooed on my hand. It's like my favorite tattoo. It's super sweet, but it's not a numbers game anymore. It used to be, but Google figured out really quickly that simply saying, hey, whoever has the most links wins isn't really the best way to judge things. Another little campfire story, because I have tons of anecdotes because I've been doing this for so long. Back in 2013, right after the Penguin update was first released, a car dealership saw me speak at a conference and approached me and said, hey, look, we're in this small town in New Jersey, and there's only 5 dealerships in our town, so everybody should be on page 1 no matter what. And in fact, we've always ranked number 1. And suddenly we don't show up in Google at all. Even if you Google the name of our dealership, we do not exist in Google's eyes. And our current SEO provider can't figure out why. Can you please help? And I said, sure, I bet you got hit by this update that just rolled out a month ago. So we went and we used some tools to check out their links. Now, at the time, if we were looking at the unique number of websites linking to a dealership site, most dealerships would have 30 or 40 different sites linking to them. If they'd been doing some SEO for a while, they may have 100 or 200. And if they had really good SEO and they'd been doing really good SEO for a couple of years, they could potentially have up to 400 or 500 different sites linking to them. This guy had 6,500 sites linking to his dealership site. And once we analyzed his links, we saw that 6,400 of those links were from Russian porn sites. So the company that he had been using was just going out and buying links because they weren't looking forward and thinking, hey, this probably isn't a sustainable strategy. So it took us almost a year to get this guy to show up in Google again. So you want to make sure that you get links from sites that have a reason to link to you. There's got to be some relevance there. And because we're talking about the local algorithm, you actually want to get links from local businesses and local websites, because that local algorithm weights links differently than Google's traditional algorithm. And it really assigns a lot of value to links that come from other businesses in close vicinity to yours. And the easiest way to get local links is to be involved in the local community. All of the old school marketing tactics that people used to do before the internet, the same sort of stuff you want to do again to get more exposure in the local community and give you really great opportunities to get some cool links. So take advantage of things that you're already doing, sponsorships you may have done, partnerships with other businesses, things that are already in place. And typically, it's really hard to build links though. Now, it's easier if you're involved in the local community, but the work, the actual process of what to do to build links, it's actually very time consuming and very difficult. So because of that, most of the time, you're probably going to want to partner with an agency to handle the link building side of things, or to handle all of your SEO if you're trying to really be aggressive. But if you're handling things yourself, I did want to share some information that would help. So I do have a video from my video series that really digs into how to do local links, some tactics for local links, and some things that you can do. Now, this video is probably only about 5 or 6 minutes long, so it's going to give you a lot better understanding She actually mentioned earlier that I've done a lot of courses for the SEM Rush Academy. I do have a link building course at the SEM Rush Academy. I should have put the link in here, but I actually kind of forgot about it because I did it a few years ago. But that's an hour-long course on link building that would be really beneficial. And then I spoke at a conference in Sydney, Australia in 2019, and I did an entire presentation about local link building tactics. So you can go and check that presentation out there if you want to dig in on that a little bit more. But I also wanted to talk about customer reviews, because customer reviews are really important to the algorithm. And obviously they matter for attracting more humans to your site and your business, but they're also really weighted in that local algorithm. So you have to be proactive. And this is something that a lot of businesses fail on. You can't just wait for reviews to trickle in, and you can't just tell people, hey, go leave me a review and expect that they're going to be able to figure out where they need to go to do so. So you need to have a proactive review process in place. And this video here explains exactly how to do that. But I called a couple of things out of that I want to make sure to share with you tonight. First of all, you want to make it easy for customers to leave a review, and you want to ask everyone. Don't be afraid to ask every single customer, because the more people you ask, the more reviews you're going to get. And when I say make it easy, that means don't just send people to Google. We like to set up a reviews page on a website. So again, using WordPress, super easy to do. Set it up at domain.com/reviews. And that way everybody knows where to send people. And that page has a simple thank you message that says, thanks for doing business with us today. Let us know how we did. Leave us a review on whichever site you'd like to leave us a review on. And you give them multiple options. And then they can click that and go directly to where they need to go to leave that review on whichever site we're talking about. And also, if you're a business that you collect customer contact information at the point of sale or before the point of sale, you can go in and ask past customers. It doesn't have to be you're only asking someone when they bought right now. If you've got customer data or an email list or whatever that might be, you can go back and ask old customers to come back and leave you a review, even though it might have been a year or two or even longer since they purchased from you. So like I said, you want to set up that reviews page that links out to the review platforms, and make sure that it's linking directly to where they need to go. Don't just link to Google, but link to your Google My Business page so that it's very easy for customers to know what to do if they want to leave that review. And then you can follow up with emails. So you do the personal ask at the point of sale, and then you tell them where to go. And then you can follow up later with an email or multiple emails that says, hey, if we haven't had a chance yet, we'd love to hear how we did. And that email also links to the /reviews page on your site with that thank you message. It's really important that you answer every single review that comes in. And watch this video, because it talks about how important it is to take a step back and take a breath before you respond to bad reviews, because a lot of people get fired up because you care about your business. And if somebody leaves you a bad review, it's a lot easier to come in hard and tell them they're wrong or tell them they're a jerk. But take a breath. Think about what you're saying before you respond to those negative reviews, because when you respond to the negative reviews, you're not actually responding to the person that wrote the review. You're actually responding so that every potential customer in the future that reads that review sees how you handled the situation. So realistically, you should be trying to contact that reviewer offline and deal with it in the real world. And then your review response is letting people know the true story or what happened afterwards so they can see how you handled the situation. A lot of businesses will freak out if they have 5.0 and then they get one bad review and it pulls them down to a 4.9, but don't freak out if you don't have a perfect score. In fact, this video here walks you through some research that's been done from multiple different companies over the years that shows typically people don't trust a perfect review score, because everybody knows there's grumpy Gus's out there, and everybody knows that sometimes people have a bad day, and everybody knows that no business is perfect. So a few bad reviews here and there actually makes you look more legitimate. So you really want a score that falls somewhere in the range of 4.3 to 4.6. That's the best score to have that results in the most conversions. So here at the end, I want to finish up the last little bit and talk about Google My Business. Your Google My Business listing is actually your homepage, not the homepage of your site, because all of the customers that used to go to your site to get your phone number to call you, or to get your address to come find you, or to see a couple of pictures, or to read some reviews, or to see when you're open, they can do all of that in Google now, and they don't have to go to your site. And Google My Business is incredibly important to your business if you want to show up in Google Maps, because If you don't have a Google My Business listing, you're not going to show up in Google Maps or in that map pack. So when you're optimizing this listing, it's important to understand the elements that really come into play. You don't want to add additional keywords to your business name in Google My Business. That's against the rules and it can get you penalized. Now, it's actually still kind of a broken signal because it's really powerful if you do add the keywords that you're trying to rank for to the end of your business name. But unfortunately, if anyone reports you or any Google employee sees that, you can get suspended, and they're very aggressive on this right now. So definitely don't add any keywords. Make sure your business name is your actual business name. Make sure you've got your correct address listed. And I know you're probably rolling your eyes going, well, duh, Greg, but you'd be surprised how many businesses don't have their actual address listed. You want to make sure also that besides having your address listed correctly, that the map pin is placed correctly, because it's not that uncommon that your address can be correct, but the map pin can be off by sometimes up to a couple of 100 yards from where your actual location is, especially if you're out more in the suburbs or closer to like rural areas. It kind of happens every once in a while that map pin won't be correct. With the link to your website, you want to make sure that you're including UTM tracking on that link, because attribution is broken in Google Analytics. You may not know that direct traffic in Google Analytics has always been taught to us that direct means someone is typing in your URL or they're using a bookmark. But in reality, direct traffic in Google Analytics is Google Analytics bucket of, geez, guys, I don't know where this came from. So on mobile devices, the mobile devices often do not pass referral information into Google Analytics. So with no referral information, that traffic gets placed in the direct bucket, which means chances are a fairly significant portion of your direct traffic is actually organic traffic. So you want to use UTM tracking on this website link. In fact, this is what you want to use to force that traffic to be classified as organic traffic, so you get the benefit of knowing that all of your hard work is paying off and more visibility and more traffic. And then also, if you put the source as GMB listing, now when you go in Google Analytics to the source medium report, you'll be able to break out at an immediate glance the difference between Google traffic that came from clicking on a standard search result and Google traffic that came from clicking on the map pack or on your Google My Business panel on the side. So it's very helpful to give you better data. You want to make sure you're choosing the correct categories, because category choice is a very key factor in which searches you will be able to show up for. And you want to be strategic with what you put in as your primary category. That category that you select first is your primary category. That's the one that's displayed underneath your review stars when you show up in your Google My Business panel, and it carries more weight in the ranking algorithm. So watch this video. It walks you through how you need to be strategic with what you pick based on your location and what your competition looks like. It's also really important that you use a local area code phone number. That's a really big signal to Google's algorithm that you are in fact a local business. It's also a trust factor that will help with conversions, because local customers will see that you've got that local area code. Nobody needs 800 numbers anymore. It does not cost to call anyone anywhere. So there's no point in having an 800 number, but that doesn't mean you can't use a tracking number. Google has actually changed the rules, and it's now best practice to put in a tracking number, because again, you're trying to optimize your site to show up. You want to be able to track that you're getting more phone calls from Google My Business. So you can put the tracking number as your primary number that shows to the public, and put your real local phone number as an alternate number, so Google's algorithm still sees that consistency between your site and all of the listings. But when it comes to a tracking number, again, people don't need toll free. So just get a local area code tracking number. It works much better. You want to make sure the correct hours are listed. Again, that's kind of a head scratcher, because you would think every business would do that, but you'd be surprised how often businesses will change their hours and forget to update them on Google My Business. And every once in a while, you're going to have situations where you are not open, or you're open different hours. And make sure you use what's called special hours in Google My Business. And this is, a lot of people call it holiday hours, but the actual widget is special hours. So the way this works, if, for instance, you are closed on Christmas Eve and Christmas, you don't have to go in and change your permanent hours. You can go into the special hours section and enter the date of December 24th and say that you're closed, and enter the date of December 25th and say that you're closed. And then your Google My Business listing will automatically update on that specific day with the special hours that you put in. And then it will automatically revert back to your standard hours after that time has passed. That way you don't have to remember to change it before your hours are different, and then remember to go back and change it back once your hours have gone back to normal. So make sure you understand how to use that. And then there's a new widget that they've added during the lockdowns last year, and it's going to be available forever, called More Hours, that lets you add additional hours for service options. And there's a video there that explains how to use them. But at a high level, these are the options that are there. So if there's a special hour or special different hours of operation for access, or if you're a restaurant for brunch or drive-through or happy hour, or when the kitchen's open, or when you've got senior hours or curbside pickup or takeout, all of these are available, and they will be listed as separate sets of hours underneath your standard hours. So make sure you use that. It's important to upload a lot of high resolution photos, and make sure that you're putting in COVID related photos. One of the things that a lot of businesses and websites fail at is that they will upload photos to Google My Business of their location completely empty. Show your employees there. Show customers there. Show that people are wearing masks if you do require masks at your place of business. Show customers in masks. Show social distance customers in line, because we know that this is stuff that people care about. Show something related to your cleaning protocols. And you can also upload videos to Google My Business. And the size limit for videos is 30 seconds of length and a max of 75 megabytes, which tends to be what commercials are sized to. So if you have any commercials that are maybe on your YouTube page, you can go upload those to Google My Business. You want to make sure that you are selecting the health and safety attributes that apply to your business. And again, there's a video there that walks you through it in detail and how to set it up. But basically, these health and safety attributes will be displayed on certain businesses that are eligible for them to say, hey, you have to have an appointment to come in, or you have to have a mask, or you have to get temperature checks, or whatever that would be. It's also important that you use Google Posts. Google Posts have been around for quite a while, but a lot of businesses aren't using them. But if you think about what they are and how they function, they're really free ads that show up in Google search results. And on mobile, they're mixed in with the search results, so they're even more prominent than they are on desktop. So you should definitely use them. It doesn't take much effort, and it's a free ad. Now, it used to be that Google Posts would go away after 7 days, but Google has changed that. So now if you're using the standard What's New post template, that post will stay live on your Google My Business listing for 6 months. Now, there's a couple of templates that have a date range that you can enter. So those posts will only be live and only be visible for the length of time in the date range that you enter. So keep in mind, if you're using the one that doesn't have a date range, it's going to be visible for 6 months. If you're using one with a date range, it disappears after the end of the date range. For the best results, you want to make sure your posts are conversation or promotional, or think of it like you need to have something there that's compelling, because remember, people are seeing these before they've been to your website, so they don't typically know much about you. So we know that people are checking a lot of different businesses out before they buy, and they're doing their research. So put something here that's promotionally focused, or something that's going to compel people to click through to your site to see how awesome you are. Don't share the same sort of social fluff that you would share on Facebook or Instagram. That stuff doesn't work with Google Posts. And for the best results, you don't want to pay as much attention to the full post. The full post is a big image in like 1,500 characters. That's all most people think about. But you have to really think more about how that image is cropped when the post thumbnail shows up, because that post thumbnail is a cropped version of the image and just a few lines of text. And if that is not compelling, nobody's going to click that thumbnail to see the full version of the post. So you want to make sure that your text is compelling. It's got to be catchy. And I actually did a Whiteboard Friday video for Moz earlier this year, all about posts. So this is a 15-minute long video that goes ridiculously in depth about Google Posts and all the ways that you can be more successful with them. So definitely go watch that video there. But the COVID update post is something a lot of businesses like, because it shows up a little bit more prominently. But the problem is it's text only, so there's no image, so it's not as eye-catching. And if you use the COVID update post template, that's the only post that will be displayed. So I've seen a lot of businesses that will do a COVID post and forget that that's active, and they'll start pushing out other posts, and then they get frustrated that the other posts don't show up. They've got to kill that COVID post to have the other posts show up first. So you want to make sure that besides compelling text, you've got an eye-catching image. And the image size that you should be uploading is 1200 by 900. But the problem is the cropping engine when you upload that image is kind of wonky. It's slightly higher than vertical center, and it doesn't always crop exactly the same way. So since it's really important to not crop text out of your image or to not crop an important element out of that image, I've created a Photoshop guide that will give you better control over that thumbnail crop. So you can download the Photoshop guide at that link right there. Now, if you don't have Photoshop, don't freak out. You can still use it. There is a website called Photopea. So that's PHOTOPEA.com. That's basically a free online version that's like Photoshop Lite. So you can download this document, open it up in Photopea and still use it. And it's pretty easy to do. So you don't have to have Photoshop, but that Photoshop document looks like this. So when you put your image in, the entire image is what's going to be displayed if they click on that thumbnail and see the full version of the post. But if they only are looking at the thumbnail, what shows up in that white grid is what's going to be cropped into your thumbnail. So you'll have better control there. And the last thing I want to talk about is the questions and answers widget that shows up in the Google My Business panel. It's actually a function of Google Maps. So you won't see this if you only do Google My Business through the Google My Business dashboard, because it doesn't show up in the dashboard since it's an element of Maps. And the questions and answers widget allows anyone to ask you a question, and any random person can answer that question for you. And that should terrify you. So you want to make sure you're paying attention so that you're answering all of those questions and controlling the conversation that's happening on your Google My Business panel. The really cool thing is you can load your own questions in and then answer your own questions. We call it a pre-site FAQ page. So remember, people are going to be shopping around. And if you want to do everything you can to stand out from your competitors and optimize your chances of getting people to call you instead of them, preloading questions here and answering those questions is a really great way to stand out, because as I type a question in, if a similar question has been asked and answered before, Google's going to automatically auto-complete the answer to my question before I've even submitted the question. So it makes it more likely that I'm going to call if I'm getting my questions answered. So make sure as you're putting questions in to include a couple of questions and answers about your COVID safety protocols. Because again, that's a really big factor in how people are choosing which businesses they want to shop from. And you want to make sure you've got that information there. Because like I said, Google's going to auto answer those questions. So it's really important that your questions are robust and you've got all of those frequently asked questions that you typically have on your site loaded into Google My Business so that people can get all of their answers and know that you are the right person to call. So here at the end, I always like to end on a fun note. I want to show some fun examples of some questions and answers from the wild. So this first one was for a car dealership in Orlando. And we see this all the time. Even though that button that you click to ask the question is maybe an inch away on the screen from the phone number that they could click on mobile, or they could go just a little bit further away and click the website link and go to your website to get your phone number. But customers think that this is a chat functionality or an instant messaging functionality. So they think there's somebody on the other end just monitoring this and answering. So you see questions like this all the time. Hey, what's your phone number? My car's overheating and I need to get it fixed. Now, this would have been a couple $1,000s at minimum for the dealership to fix. And notice nobody's paying attention and nobody answered that question. Or this was a fun one where somebody said, hey, your website sucks. And somebody actually answered it and said, yeah, I'm not a fan of it either. And that's funny, but that probably means that they did not have a very good website and it was difficult to navigate. And that's a good sign that you need to update what you're doing. This was a fun one. A couple of years ago, I was doing a thing actually at Google headquarters in Austin for a bunch of car dealers, for a bunch of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram dealers. And I always like to try to pull up some local stuff to personalize it a little bit. And I had this example that this question said, hey, does South Point have a body shop? And the answer is, don't go here. Look at the reviews. I had a horrible experience. They lie to you and everyone else. But this is the primary answer to the question. Notice there's 6 more answers. So questions can get multiple answers, and whichever answer has the most thumbs up or the most upvotes is the one that's displayed as primary. If we look at the other answers, the dealership answered the question. And whenever the business owner answers the question, it says owner in parentheses. And this is obviously a much better answer and better first impression, but they weren't paying attention and they didn't have it thumbed up. So all you have to do is pay attention and thumbs up that answer. And now that one will appear as the primary answer to the question. And this was for a conference I did at a hotel in Boston a couple of years ago. And it was a really confusing hotel, kind of like the ones in Vegas where they go off in a million directions. You weren't sure how the room numbers were ordered. So somebody asked, how are the room numbers ordered? And this guy says alphabetically. And if you see a smug little smile, he loves to give funny answers to questions. There are people out there that will just go give comedic answers to questions to businesses in their local area. And while we all laugh at that, it's not a great first impression for that hotel. And this last one is my favorite one of all time, but it has since been edited by the guy that left the answer because he thinks he's a comedian. But originally, this is for the London Eye, the big Ferris wheel on the Thames River in downtown London. And the question is, do you have to wear a helmet? And the original answer was, you don't have to, but you can if you wish. I believe Viking helmets are a popular choice. And, you know, this is one of those Ferris wheels where it's an enclosed car. So you don't need helmets, obviously. So I don't know why people would even ask that, but it's funny. And it's another example of something that we all think is funny, but this major tourist attraction should be paying attention and have a better first impression there. So if you load all of your own questions and do all of your own answers and keep your answers upvoted, you have that awesome pre-site FAQ experience that looks like this. So I know that was a lot. Hopefully that fire hose did not explode anyone's brain. And for those of you that haven't seen Scanners, his brain literally does explode, because the truth is out there about local SEO and how to get your sites to show up better when local customers are looking for you. And now you have the key to optimizing your sites better to capture that traffic. So you'll be able to break out of your shells and do better marketing for your WordPress sites so that your business and your site will be able to live long and prosper. So that was how to show up in local searches in a post-COVID landscape and beyond. There's my Twitter handle. So if any of you are active Twitter users, follow me on Twitter, because I am starting to do a lot of in-person events again. And I always live tweet conferences because I go to so many, I kind of get bored seeing the same people speak over and over again. So it's a great way to keep up to current events and current best practices. There's my email address. If any of you have any questions, I have an open email policy, so I will always answer questions that people have. I'm not going to try to sell you stuff. I just like to help. And then if you'd like to get a copy of the slides, I'd be happy to send you a copy of the slides as well. Or you can just screen capture this bit right here, because at the end, I always have all of the movies in order of release date. So you guys have a cool list of movies to watch, besides all of the awesome SEO knowledge I just imparted. So thanks so much for showing up tonight and watching this. Or hey, if you're watching the recording later, thanks for sitting through and watching the recording.
Dude, oh my God. Talk about fire hose, you're right. Jesus. That's awesome. That's the other thing, is the list of all the bit.ly links that you had. I was trying to keep up. I'm like, I give up. I can't keep up with all of them. So
the thing to do is just go to searchlabdigital.com and go to the blog, and all the videos are posted there. I just put the bit.ly link so that it's not some like searchlabdigital.com/blog/ whatever the long URL is. It's just easier to have the easy things.
No, they all look like really good resources. That was like trying to follow like the image sizes. And anyway, it was pretty amazing. So just so everybody knows, I'm recording this and it is going on the WordPress meetup YouTube page. So just in case y'all were like, what was that he said? But Greg, if you're okay, can you hang around for a few minutes for some Q&A?
Yeah, totally. Also, Rick, I need to thank you for the laughter, because you were the only one that had your camera on and it was over to the side. And like, it's always hard to do these virtual when I have those bad puns and bad jokes, because you never know how they're going over. So it's good to see that at least somebody was laughing at my jokes. So thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so let's get started. You can just unmute yourself. This isn't a webinar. So if you have a question for Greg, please go for it. Don't be shy.
Anybody?
Come on.
Hey, Greg, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Okay, you were talking about not adding spammy keywords like to the Google My Business listing.
Yep.
But it honestly seems like that broken signal still seems to have more prominence than it should. Yeah, I actually do local SEO here for a couple like garage door companies and stuff like that, and it feels like playing whack-a-mole with a lot of these companies. I mean, do you know like what the kind of like I don't know, like when you submit the
So there's two things to do to fight those guys. Is that where you're going?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, does Google even pay attention when you fight them? Because of the fact, like I've submitted to both as a suggest a name and the form. I can't even remember what the form name is right at the moment.
Yep.
But flagging the business, and I go back the next week and they're still right there. And
so what you want to do Do the suggest and edit first. It's for everybody else. If you're fighting that keyword spam, on the Google My Business listing above that top line information, there's a link that says suggest and edit. You can suggest and edit, click that you want to suggest and edit to the name or other details. And you can go in and say, this is what the business name should be. Chris, if you're the only one doing that, it's less likely to work. What's better is if you're fighting that, get 2 or 3 other people besides yourself to make the same requests. Because if Google gets that, the suggested edit, I'm sure you've seen it on your own stuff. Sometimes you'll log in and there'll be stuff in orange and it's like Google has taken this from other sources. Do you accept the edit or not? But if multiple people are all saying the same thing, then it's more likely that Google's going to see it. But to be more aggressive than that, you can use Google's redressal form, which is a form that you go to say, hey, Google, these guys are cheating and here's what they're doing. If you submit that, sometimes it might take a couple of submissions to finally get a human to see it. So you may have to do it multiple times, but do that. Like, do the suggest and edit first with a couple of people. If it hasn't changed in 3 or 4 days, go do the redressal form. If it hasn't changed in a week, do the redressal form again. If you've done the redressal form 2 or 3 times and nothing's happened, you want to go to the GMB community forum, create a post, share as much detail about what you've done. So Google support is not good at the best of times, but during COVID, it's severely understaffed. And a lot of their staff is over in India, which is still having a lot of problems with COVID. So support is very behind and very backlogged. So if you go to the Google My Business community forum, it's actually staffed by volunteers. And once people have answered stuff often enough and correctly enough, they get invited to be what's called a product expert, which means Google has endorsed this person and said, this person knows their stuff. If a product expert answers, that's the right answer. And then as you're in that program, as you continue to give out good levels of answers, you can eventually get to a certain level. And once you get to either gold or platinum level, you're actually at an NDA level with Google. And like, I'm a gold and I have a weekly meeting with GMB's team, not support, but the GMB team. And so those gold and platinum product experts in the forum have the ability to escalate forum threads directly to the Google My Business team. So if you're having issues, and like garage door repair is one of the really, really spammy verticals like locksmith that everybody just really cheats. You'll go look for garage door repair Houston, and like every company will be like garage door repair Houston, garage door repair Houston.
Welcome to what I'm fighting. Exactly.
Yep.
Well,
So,
web designers too. I swear, it's just like super spammy.
yeah, exactly. So you can go to the Google My Business forum, create a post, and make sure you share all of the information of, I've done suggest and edit multiple times. I've done the redressal form 3 times. If you happen to have heard back a reply from Google on anything and you've got some sort of case number, include that. But you could at that point say, I'm in Houston, I'm finding garage door repair. Here's the 15 listings that are all either completely fake or that are faking their names. And here's the details that prove it, and put that forum post in. And then one of us that's a product expert can go escalate it and get those guys nuked.
Awesome. Because yeah, there's names that aren't even spelled correctly with door. I mean, you have like DOO''R and then spam link, a mile long. It's like, come on.
Yep.
I found that another thing, so I've got like a 6 or 7 rating when it comes to Google's review system, right? Because I've done so many reviews, photos, all that stuff. That's been helpful for me when I start, editing Google My Business listings.
You talk about your local guide score?
Yeah, just my guide score. Exactly.
Yeah, so,
it's been somewhat helpful.
That's another thing, is if you get into the local guide program and do enough suggested edits and reviews and photos and stuff that you get to be a higher level Google guide, supposedly that will make them pay attention to your suggestions a little bit more. But
a little bit.
Spammy verticals like garage door repair, it probably wouldn't make a difference, honestly. You're probably going to end up most of the time either just going right to redressal or going right to the forum.
Amber had a question. How do I get on a map pack 1, 2, or 3 position? That's a loaded question.
So,
I think you addressed in the beginning of your presentation.
Yeah, it was at the beginning. And the most important thing to understand is that the map pack is a lot more based on the real world physical location of your business and the real world physical location of the person doing the search. So we have tons of clients. And it very often happens that we'll have a client call us or email us frantically at night and say, oh my God, my SEO quit working. I don't show up anymore. Because they'll be at the office and they'll check their keywords and they rank #1 in the map pack because they're searching from their location. So the proximity is 0. Then they drive 45 minutes away and go home and do the search. And there's a whole lot of other options that are closer. So they don't show up anymore and they freak out. And that's literally, like, we've done studies, like Darren Shaw from White Spark did a study when he spoke at a conference in London a couple of years ago, where he was looking for a dry cleaner downtown London. And he did the search on his phone. He went a block, he did the search again. He went another block, he did the search again, went another block and did the same search again. So he had 4 search results to compare. And each time the 3-pack was different just from moving a block away. So trying to show up in the map pack 1, 2, or 3 is a very difficult thing to do. Number one, most important, is you have to have an address in the city that's being searched. So if, for instance, your business is physically located in like the Woodlands, but that's still sort of the Houston metro, and you want to show up when somebody's looking for garage door repair Houston, but the actual office is in the Woodlands, it's very unlikely you're going to show up in 1, 2, or 3, because as soon as somebody specifies Houston, Google's going to show people where their address is really in Houston. So that's the second most important factor. And then the most important factor is physical proximity, which is how far away the search result is from the person doing the search. So those 2 factors are something you can't really optimize for. Depending on what your vertical is, though, it's possible to get there. So, you know, garage door repair, locksmith, car dealer, dry cleaner, whatever, there's going to be tons of competition for that. But if you are one of 3 people in the greater Houston metro that has an underwater basket weaving studio, well, then sure, you're going to be able to show up in the 3-pack anywhere in the metro, because there's just not any competition. But if there's any amount of competition whatsoever, worry more about doing all the stuff that I talked about and doing good SEO and optimizing your GMB, and you'll have the best chance possible of showing up in that 3-pack. But everybody's going to see different results based on where their location is. So it's not really an accurate thing to go after.
So I have a follow-up question to that. One of the things that I've read before is that, and I'm trying to see if this is true, is the more reviews that you have, or the more quality reviews you have, the more kind of you have a chance of ranking 1, 2, or 3 further out of your proximity, that they actually kind of increases your relevancy. Is that true or not?
It's typically the people that are going to have more reviews and have more visibility further out are doing a lot of other things that are better SEO. Reviews in and of themselves are not going to be enough of a signal to get you to show up further out if you're not actually in the city. Anybody else?
Amber had another question regarding homepage. Is putting a video on your homepage bad due to loading speed? I would say it depends.
If it is an autoplay background video, yes, don't do that. Everybody thinks those autoplay background videos are really cool, but nobody's ever going to say, I bought from you because you had a video on the background of your homepage. It's distracting from what your site exists for. If you really think, again, boil down to simple concepts. Why do you have a website? You have a website so people can see what you do and call you and buy from you. That video does not help with that, because you're going to have content on top of that. Now, if it's a video like a standard YouTube embed, that's okay, because that video doesn't have to completely load for the page to be counted as loaded. That video is not really going to start loading until somebody clicks play, and then it kind of loads asynchronously. So putting the video there isn't a bad thing. Videos are great if they're well done, and they will help you convert.
Is there a way to fight sites that rank well but are all affiliate links with mostly stolen content?
I'm not sure what he means by sites that are all affiliate links.
I've seen these where they're just where, I don't know, Dave, if you want to hop on and unmute yourself and explain. I don't know, is he still here? I don't know.
Looks like he's here.
Still here, yeah.
Video, but he's got audio, but he's muted. Dave, come on, talk to us, dude.
So I'm not sure. There's some websites that are pretty spammy. There's just affiliate links, but they're stolen content from maybe your site or other people's sites, and it's just fully loaded.
If you're being outranked by a site that has duplicate content that it stole off another site, that's a very clear indicator that your SEO sucks, and you need to do all the stuff that I talked about tonight. And if you do all of that, you'll blow past any of those crappy scraper sites.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just hooked up my mic. We actually rank fairly well nationally for one company here in town, but there's another guy that's mainly got affiliate links, and he actually stole one of our videos and put it on his site. So all his site is affiliate links. Everything goes to an Amazon link where I'm sure he's getting, you know, a fee for that if somebody clicks on it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you can really do is try to out SEO him so that you show up higher than he does on whatever stuff he's trying to rank for. A lot of times those affiliate dudes are actually really good at SEO because that's how they make their money, is they go create those crappy affiliate sites and optimize them in areas where most of the competition isn't doing very good SEO or doing SEO at all. And then it's really easy to rank and rake in that affiliate money. But typically those guys, once they have those sites up, are not very active and they don't do much with them. So then if you come in and you out SEO them, it's usually really easy to blow past them.
Okay.
Dara actually had another question, which is kind of interesting because you talked about Google My Business reviews being important for local SEO. What about Facebook reviews?
So Facebook reviews are not really a factor anymore because for some boneheaded reason, Facebook decided to switch off of a numerical review into a binary yes or no recommendation. So who cares if somebody's like, yeah, I recommend these guys, or no, I don't. There's not much context there. Facebook used to be a more important review site, but lately it's just kind of a non-factor. And we don't really like to suggest for people to go there because it's a little bit obfuscated how Facebook actually calculates that score. Because how do you go, oh, they've got a 3.5 when all you have is yes or no? The other problem is we've seen lately a lot of reviews dropping off of Facebook. So older reviews that were on the numerical system are starting to drop off and disappear, which will lower your review count and lower your score, or maybe put your score up depending on what's going away. But it's just so volatile and so just not really helpful to the customer aspect. We really don't care much about Facebook reviews anymore.
Lauren, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. So I was just trying to figure out in terms of like the Google My Business listing, I don't have a business location. I mean, it's my home, and then I go out and do photography, or, you know, for the design aspect of it, I'm doing it here at the house. So I don't really want my home address listed, but I still want people to recognize like, oh, she's in the Houston, Katy, Richmond, you know, area.
So that's what we call in the industry a service area business, or an SAB. When you go into Google My Business, there is a checkbox on the info tab where you're typing in your address, and you can say hide this address. If you click hide this address, you won't have a map pin, but you still will be able to show up in search results. So this is more, you'd be very similar to like a plumber or an electrician, where most of the time they're operating out of their house. They don't have an office. And even if they did, you don't do face-to-face business at an office. You do face-to-face business out somewhere else. And so that's what's called a service area business. Yeah, you totally just set it up, click hide your address, and then all the other elements are there.
Okay, so it doesn't penalize the fact that I've clicked that.
It does not. In fact, there is a section in that info tab where you can enter in the areas that you serve, and you can put in like cities or zip codes or whatever. A lot of businesses will fill that out, but not hide their address. If you don't have your address hidden so that your address is publicly displayed, that field is useless and it does nothing for you. But that field is there so that if you do hide your address, you can then say, here's where I am. Now, it doesn't really affect where you rank because Google's still going to use your address, even though it's not being displayed. But the cool thing that it does is it draws like a little line around the metro area, or, you know, if you're just off to one corner of the metro, it will give you kind of a visual representation of these are the areas you serve. Think of it like pizza delivery. If you're within that grid, then cool, you get the pizza delivered. If you're outside, hey man, you got to call somebody else. So same thing with you in the photography. You'll take pictures anywhere in this area. So it's more of a conversion point than a ranking point, but yeah, it's totally doable.
Okay, awesome.
Wow. Anyone else have any other questions? No.
No, actually, I had one other question, if I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. You had talked about a tracking number in place of like your regular phone number maybe being second and having a tracking phone number first. I wasn't sure what that was.
So yeah, so it used to be back in the day that you had to have your real local area code phone number listed in Google, and you still should. But if you put a tracking number so in Google My Business, you can enter in your phone number and you have 2 slots for alternate phone numbers. You just put your actual phone number as alternate number 1 and whatever your tracking number is for your main phone number. Now, if you're a photographer and you're self-employed and all you do is your own photography business, it may not matter as much to you, because all that really matters is, are you getting phone calls? And you don't really care if they're calling you off of your website or off of Google or off of Yelp or off of Facebook or whatever. If you did want to have that information and just know that, like, I want to be able to tell the difference between people that are calling me because they're calling from seeing my phone number on my website, or they're calling me because they saw my phone number on Google, then you could get a call tracking number for like 40 or 50 bucks a month. And that's a different number. And all that number does is just redirect to your phone. So it's still your cell phone that's ringing every time, but it's a different phone number that customers see and that customers call. So then every month you can log in and see, oh, cool, I got 25 calls from Google this month. And then as you do the things that I talked about and start working on your site to hopefully get better visibility, then over time you can see in your call tracking that you're getting more phone calls.
Yeah, we've also added UTMs to even the websites in GMB. So it's not just, for example, goalspecs.com, it's goalspecs.com/UTM, blah, 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 campaign GMB. And that way we've been able to just do a little more tracking for anything come from GMB. Because I think you even mentioned that even in analytics, what does it come as, direct or something?
A lot of times mobile traffic will come through as direct. Desktop traffic's usually correct, but I mean, we've done this sometimes and seen like a 20% lift the next day in organic traffic. And it's not because we did anything, it's just 20% of the traffic was attributed incorrectly.
Right. Cool. Well, it is 8:30 on the dot, folks. So Greg's been talking for almost an hour and a half straight. Give him a break here. But if there's no more questions, I want to thank you so much, Greg.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
It was really, really great and such good information. And like I said, it's recorded. So everybody don't feel too bad if you missed some stuff. There's a lot in here. But yeah, reach out to Greg. He's got his Twitter out there. But next week or next month, I don't have a plan yet. I don't know who's going to speak next month, but anyway, if anyone's got any ideas, if you'd like to be a speaker, please send me a message on the meetup and we'll go from there. But thank you again. Thanks, Greg. So everyone have a great evening. Talk to you later. Someone asked where it's posted. We have a YouTube channel. So Google Houston WordPress meetup in YouTube and we show up. So, all right, guys. Later. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.